Hey, welcome back to the Backyard Professor Chess videos. Let's look at another really fabulous game with the Ruy Lopez as our opening of study, just to see how various nuances of it is played. This one is by Alekhine, and he is versing Alekhine. I think that's how you pronounce his name. This is in Podobrod, 1936. Alekhine is the white. Let's see how Alekhine handles the Ruy Lopez and see if there's anything we can learn from Alekhine. I suspect there is. Every one of his games is a treat to play through, whether he won or lost. As far as I'm saying, he's like Bobby Fischer. Every game is worth playing through several times. It's so fun just for the pure joy of it. Don't worry about learning anything. You can't help it. That comes automatically simply because of the way he plays. Typical, he will castle here. This is all typical Ruy Lopez. Nothing new, fancy, different, or yet. And of course, rook to e1, a standard move. b5, hit the bishop again, drop the bishop back. And the d6. This is after you chase the bishop off, if the bishop decides not to take the knight, and that gives you a whole nother dimension in the Ruy Lopez. The d6 push is critical. Support that pawn, the king pawn. That is black's mission in the Ruy Lopez, and this is by far the best way to do it. So let's see how Alekhine does this. Oh, he bumps c3. That's a C, not an E. And now he immediately does hit the bishop, so it was a good thing he bumped, because you don't... Most of the players who are playing white in the Ruy Lopez do not want to lose that white squared bishop. They keep it, and it comes in vital when you do a kingside attack against the castled king. That's why they are at such pains. Now, the C push here, the bump, is not a waste of time, because white definitely wants to sometime hit this pawn by pressing that pawn. This supports that push. Yeah. So saving the bishop is not a waste of a pawn move to bump the C pawn. Later on, it will support your central thrust further, which gives it even greater strength. And he went bishop c2, and now he continues his queenside pawn push. So black is going for the queenside, and there is nothing wrong with that. And he seems to be getting some real good space so that he can move his pieces behind his pawns and use his pawns to gain him space and disrupt the queenside. You can see at this point Alekhine's queenside is truly undeveloped. So it makes beautiful sense that his opponent is pushing those pawns to come into the queenside. That's actually sensible. Here he does a single bump at this point. Okay? Kind of interesting. The knight will come back to c6, and Alekhine's bringing his knight out, a very typical maneuver. They bring the knight here to here and do a kingside. So we'll watch to see if Alekhine does that. I've seen that in quite a few of the Grandmaster games, so we'll see. And then yeah, he castles. So the castling is done, and sure enough, yeah, knight f1. Yeah, that's a typical move too. And the rook to e8, they're going to fight on that file. And they want as much support when they fight that, because these pawns are going to start being exchanged and fighting. Or potentially an f-pawn if one of the knights moves up and then an f-pawn is pushed, these pawns will get traded off. The center is not locked. And Usually in the Ruy Lopez it doesn't get locked because they do want to open it up eventually for either the queenside attack or the kingside attack. So we shall see. This is looking really interesting at this point. And instead, now I've seen many games and the options are to G3, but Alekhine puts it to E3 this time in this particular game. So I have seen it put on the G3 also. D5, his opponent is going to start being, is going to be the first one to the center in order to attack the center influence with the pawns. And I mean, you can see neither one of these guys have neglected the center at all. It is going to be a terrific battle. When you get to this point, you need to exchange the pawns. You just do. Yeah, you can't let him run you over. So the E will take, and now the knight will take. So here we go with a few exchanges, and the knight will take. So you can see now why Alekhine, had he moved here, his being able to control the center would have been less, wouldn't it? And you need to control the center before you go on a wing attack, whether it's the king side or the queen side. So it makes sense that Alekhine didn't go here. He went here instead because he had calculated ahead of time, I'm going to be pushing the pawns as well as my opponent, and I want to be able to respond with that. So that makes sense too. So it's a good thrust. And his opponent now takes the knight. The fight for the center is a very real thing in the Grandmasters games. And now Alekhine continues his forward attacking of the center with that pawn push. His opponent will take the pawn with the pawn. And Alekhine here puts the bishop on E4, hitting the target, the queen. He has moved the rook over, which gives him a splendid attack with that bishop against the queen, with the knight, and with the rook, potentially. So that is a real good power move. The queen, of course, is going to bump down. Yeah, you got to respond to that. And only after acquiring the target in the center with the support of a rook on a file does he exchange the pawn. He is improving his overall position instead of just attacking pawns all the time, right? His opponent put bishop to f6. Boy, hitting that pawn, and the rook. That's not a bad move there, is it? Alekhine responds with a startling bishop to g5. Definitely a unique, interesting idea. He will swap the dark bishops. He is happy to swap the dark bishops because that will help him with the attack of the king side. And the variation here is that if black doesn't play this right, he will lose his queen. With the way the rooks are lined up, rather than taking the bishop with the bishop, which leaves open Alekhine to take the knight with the bishop, forking the queen and the rook, and this rook being open to hit that rook, that is not what you would want. So the culprit in this is not this bishop. It's this one. That's the dangerous one, because that fork attacks all three of the powerful pieces. Yeah. So, black plays this in the right way with as much power as he can, but he still comes up short. He's playing Alekhine, you know. It's like playing Capablanca. You never ever did anything but come up short against Capablanca, yeah? And now the exchange of the heavy pieces begin. Rook will take the e4. Bishop now rather, it's very interesting what he does here. If you're material minded, you want to take the bishop, but letting that knight onto g5 it's pure suicide. You can see that, right? I mean, the knight here, and then the queen coming up to here, and it's close to curtains, right? So rather than enhance Alekhine's ability to attack by taking the bishop, you improve Alekhine's position, ironically enough, for an attack. Because, once again, reading the board, the king here is true, the pawns have not moved. He's got cover, but he doesn't have protection. So, the idea here is he takes the pawn going toward the king. He takes out the central pawn. That changes the dynamic so that the knight will take the bishop. Notice who has the open file with the rook right dead center. And then the knight will take the knight on a nice post. That's not bad, right? However, queen to h5. That option is there for the king side. Yeah, ooh, ooh, that's tough. He does hit a target. Bishop b7. Now, rook h4. I mean, when you've got the big boys out and they want to play, line them up and holy cow, what a battery that is. And where are the protectors? We've seen this before. This is a very, very familiar theme by now for any of you who've been watching my videos for any time. This theme, yeah, go after that king, man. He's way, 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 way too open. And where is, okay, rook h4 and then queen to f5. So the queen can come into here supporting rather than, see, and that makes sense too, because this, that's a pawn bump. Yeah, see, that doesn't even help you. And that is not going to help you. Heck, he could take the pawn and crack the king side open, and that's not going to help you, because he can do the same thing. He can crack, yeah. Pushing the pawns just does not work, so he's got this at this point. I don't know if that's enough or not, but, and interestingly enough now here, bishop e3. Wow. What a move. A discovered attack on the queen. Black cannot afford to trade the queens in this position. And yet he's going to lose one of his most powerful posted pieces, the knight. Really, really a tough spot for him to be in. And so all he can do is, again, bring his final piece into it to support the knight. And now Alekhine pulls a real surprise. And I did not see this one coming either. I go, wow, you know, his inside is electrifying. The rook takes the knight. And it's here that he resigns. Black resigns, not white. White wins. Why? Once again, the incredibly interesting threat that shows up in all chess games. Grandmaster, Master, International Master, even us who are learning chess. Experts, beginners, everyone alike. If he takes the rook, then he loses his queen. You can't do that. If he takes the queen, he loses the game. Back rank checkmate. That back rank checkmate, man, that gets us. And I've had my fair share of them. So anyway, that's one of the more fun, enjoyable Ruy Lopez's of Alexander Alekhine. I like playing through all of his. So we're getting a feel for the Ruy Lopez. I do have a couple more games of the Ruy that I'd like to show you that are exquisitely fascinating, and they're just absolutely beautifully played by top-notch grandmasters. So in the meantime, remember, don't stay up too late watching these videos, because if you yawn in church tomorrow, if you go to church, or if you fall asleep at the wheel when you're driving tired, and don't ever do that, you know, life can get difficult, and don't make it difficult for you. So, alrighty, you guys, I will see you in the next Backyard Professor Chess video.